In an Agile planning meeting, we try to identify which tasks are required to implement a requirement, or all of the requirements for a particular sprint. In this case, let's take a look at the example of one specific story from the Lego Part Warehouse Manager system. First of all, I want to reflect that the technical work required will involve some programming work, probably some documentation work, and some software testing work. Now, to take a look at what is required, what technical work is required by the team, we might start with looking at an image of the design of the system. So in this particular case, we have a block diagram that represents the design. The blocks are represented as square boxes for each process, and the relationship between processes are represented by lines, and some of them are directed and some of them are not. So the core element of the Lego Part Warehouse Manager is the inventory manager, that's the block in the center, and then that interacts with a put away process, which puts blocks, basically puts Legos away in the right place, and we get those from the receiving process. We receive them from other vendors. When we ship them, well, someone picks them from inventory, so there's the picking process, and they get shipped through the shipping process. The inventory manager interacts with what we call a product manager, which is software that organizes our warehouse into parts that can be placed in certain bins in different locations and keeps track of the parts so that when we need more, it invokes a reorder process. And complementing the entire system is a data manager, which reports to basically information that can be used by auditors to check on the veracity of the system. That's the design element. So before we identify tasks, we've got to realize that to implement a new requirement, we've got to be aware of the design and what might change in the design. We need knowledge of the story. So in this case, the user story we're going to look for testing tasks of is create pick list story. So as a Lego Part Warehouse operator, I would like to create a pick list from a customer order so that a warehouse picker will be able to fulfill the specific order for the customer. So we have basically a simple Mike Cohen style user story. Who was the user, what do they want to do, and why? And this information is important for identifying tasks, but it's insufficient. To get more information, we need to also know what are the acceptance criteria. Luckily, during the grooming session, we collected many acceptance criteria for the create pick list story in terms of the normal flow, alternate flow, and error flows. And we collected at least a dozen of them, depending on all sorts of interesting conditions. And all of those are examples of what our stakeholders expect the behavior of the system to be in certain conditions relating to creating a pick list. So we've got, at this time, so the planning meeting is starting, we have the statement of the story, we have the list of acceptance criteria for the story. The team has already discussed the story and understands how it relates to previous past works. And now the team is going to discuss what are we going to have to change to implement the story. So in this case, they will use the block diagram to help visualize the changes. And this is not uncommon in Agile teams to use a block diagram on a whiteboard, perhaps. And in this case, what we're identifying is what is going to happen to the blocks. So if we implement the create pick list story based on the discussion of the team, and this is a technical discussion, so they're looking at the technological solution to the problem, and we'll see that, well, some process we don't have to change at all, some processes need some sort of minor code changes, and some need significant code changes. So this will help us. So now we know the team has discussed what is the technical work required to program it, so we can see that there would be tasks to change the shipping process, tasks to change the picking process, tasks to change the inventory manager, tasks to change the product manager, and tasks to change the part manager by people who are suitably qualified to modify the technology The Agile team then continues their discussion and identifies relevant testing tasks. The team knows the story. The team knows the acceptance criterion for the story. The team knows what their definition of done is. The team knows what the target environment of the customer is, and any other relevant business, technology, organizational, or cultural factors on the project. So this is a list of some examples of testing tasks identified. So these are tasks that support programming, paired brainstorming of unit testing ideas, taking a look at static analysis results as part of the build process, these are to support customers, creating the hooks for test automation using, in this case, they're using tools like Cucumber. They create fixture files for the acceptance test, so each test will be described in a way that can be automated. They'll define the step definitions, they'll integrate this into the continuous integration server, and they'll actually run the acceptance tests. There's some tasks identified related to testability, in this case, putting hooks in the code to enable scripting. There are tasks identified to help assess capabilities, confirm the pick lists can be created in normal conditions, confirm the pick list can be created in some sort of more harsh conditions. There's tasks related to capabilities, confirm pick lists can be created by analysis with a type of technique of test design called domain analysis for certain conditions like the number of items, the order quantities, the product types, number of bins, and variations in bin counts. There's tasks related to failure modes. What if the wrong parts are in bins? What if the system powers down in the middle of a transaction? There are tasks related to usage scenarios. Can an operator add a new part to the system? Can an operator add inventory to the system? Can the auditor generate inventory reports? And most of these tasks come from looking at what are the technical changes in the system. There are tasks related to non-functional attributes of the system. Study the performance as we create pick lists with between 1 and 10,000 items. Study the user experience by paired testing with a novice user. Study the user experience with a experienced user, with different types of user experience tests. There's tasks that are cross-functional testing. So exercise create new pick list while new items are added to inventory. What if an item is requested in the pick list that's deprecated? So these are all cross-functional tests. End-to-end tests. We might take a typical pick transaction and trace it with the programmer end-to-end. Create a pick list using, this is data, using fuzz to corrupt data. So imagine the system's database has randomly been corrupted. How would the system behave then? And then there's white box techniques. This is looking at the code. We'll pair with the programmer and we'll do some transactional testing in the sandbox before the code is checked in. So this is a series of tasks identified related to testing for the implementation of the story of the Lego Parts Warehouse Manager.